The Cthar motherships darkened the skies of yet another world. Below, the city of Halara burned with a cold, blue fire. The people, tall and gentle with skin like polished river stone, did not scream. They sang. Their harmonies rose in a final, defiant chorus as the beams from above dissolved their great library towers, turning millennia of history into drifting ash. On the command bridge of the lead dreadnought, the Archon watched. His form was imposing, a silhouette of sharp angles and dark, interlocking plates. "Mark this system," his voice echoed, a sound like grinding stone. "Another memory erased. Their future is now ours to write." The Cthar did not just conquer. They consumed. Planets were stripped for resources, yes, but more importantly, cultures were stripped for context. They burned books, shattered data cores, and toppled monuments. A species that forgot its past, the Archon believed, could offer no resistance to the future he imposed. His armada, the Galactic Confluence, swept through the Orion Arm like a silent plague, leaving behind sterile worlds and broken, hollow people. Weeks later, the edge of their charted space showed a lonely yellow star. A single blue-green planet hung in the void. Scans showed low-level radiation, ruined structures, and no energy signatures beyond geothermal and wind. Its designation was old, almost forgotten. Sol 3. Terra. Earth. "A relic," said a tactical officer, her voice dismissive. "Pre-diaspora. The humans fled their cradle centuries ago after their climate wars. It is a tomb." The Archon felt a flicker of disappointment. He hungered for significant histories to erase, not empty museums. Dispatch a survey team. Be thorough. Even a tomb may hold a lesson in failure. The landing craft settled on a broad, cracked plain near the remains of a gigantic city. Wind howled through skeletal buildings. Captain Kale, a rigid Cthar veteran, led his team through the dust. They found rusted vehicles, collapsed bridges, and bones long turned to stone. "Primitive," Kale reported, kicking a decrepit data terminal. "They relied on brittle physical storage. Look." He held up a crumbled book, the pages disintegrating at his touch. Fragile, ephemeral. They explored deeper, into a vast underground complex shielded from the elements. It was a library not of light and data, but of paper and ink. The air was dry and still. Kale's helmet light swept over endless rows of decaying shelves. "Scan it all," he ordered. "Log it for the archive of conquered knowledge before purification." His soldiers moved, their scanners humming. They recorded titles on strange, flat sheets. Philosophy, poetry, manuals for machines that no longer existed, diagrams of lost gardens, stories of love and loss. One soldier, a younger male named Rin, paused. He carefully picked up a book that had survived better than most, its cover still intact. It was a collection of maps. He flipped a page, revealing a hand-painted image of a mountain under a stars and stripes banner. A place called Siraxan National Park. "Captain," Rin said, his voice quiet, They named their stars. They drew pictures of their hills." Kale strode over and snatched the book. He glanced at it, then tossed it aside into a heap of others. "Sentiment. It is a weakness. They spent their time drawing hills instead of forging plasma cannons. This is why they are gone. They left their cradle and scattered like dust on the solar wind. No unity. No lasting legacy." The final survey report was compiled. No hidden weapons. No dormantai. Only the sad, physical remnants of a species that had dreamed small and died out. The Archon reviewed the data on his bridge. He saw images of rust, paper, and stone. A fitting end, the Archon announced to his crew. Humanity was a cautionary tale. They reached for the stars but forgot to build a foundation of steel and will. They cherished memory instead of the future. Mark this system as inconsequential. There is nothing here to conquer, and nothing here worth remembering. The Cthar fleet powered up their drives. With a silent flash, they vanished into the void, leaving the dead world behind. The wind continued to blow across the empty library, rustling the pages of the discarded book of maps. On the page showing the mountain, a single line of text was printed in a forgotten language. Jikji. It was just a word, lost in the ruins. But deep below that library, beneath layers of collapsed rock and sealed by ancient, automated systems, a single low-power beacon hummed. It had hummed for centuries. It was not a weapon. It was not a call for help. It was a keeper of a frequency, a silent promise written not in steel, but in the pattern of a culture's mind. It waited. It listened to the silence left by the Ravagers. And far, far away, in the cold dark between galaxies, something that had been sleeping for a very long time heard the echo of that silence. A single light on a frozen console flickered from gray to amber. A process patient beyond measure began its first step. The air on the colony world of New Taejun smelled of damp soil and growing things. It was a quiet, green planet, far from the main space lanes. Its people were farmers, engineers, and teachers. They were descendants of the great human diaspora, but many generations had softened the memory of Earth into stories and festivals. In a small, metal-roofed house at the edge of the main settlement, an old man named Min was dying. He was thin, his face a map of deep lines. His granddaughter, Lee, sat by his bed, holding his hand. She was young, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. The room was not like the others in the colony. It was filled with old things. Real paper books sat on shelves. There were data crystals in old formats, and on the wall, a framed image of a blue planet half covered in white clouds. "They will come here soon, Lee," Min whispered, his voice like dry leaves. "The Kthar, the burners of worlds. They are 2 systems away." Lee shook her head, squeezing his hand. "We have nothing for them. We are just farmers. They want advanced tech, great cities. They will pass us by." A sad, knowing smile touched Min's lips. "You think like they do. You think value is only in what shines, in what powers a warship." He took a painful breath. "They are wrong, and that is their weakness. Our greatest treasure has no physical power at all." He gestured weakly to a heavy, old-fashioned safe in the corner. "The key, around my neck." Lee took the cold metal key. She opened the safe. Inside were not coins or jewels, but more books, a few artifacts, and a single, smooth data crystal that glowed with a soft, blue light. She brought it to him. Min held the crystal as if it were a newborn child. "This is the vault key. Contains the last, verified copy of the Earth archives. Not just facts, but the how. How we thought. How we rebuilt after every disaster. The patterns of our stubbornness." He looked into Lee's eyes. "I have taught you history not as a hobby, but as a weapon. A different kind of weapon. The Kthar, they see a history book and they see a thing to burn. They cannot understand that the book is not the memory. It is the seed. The memory lives in the people who read it, who learn its lessons." He pressed the crystal into her palm, his hand trembling. "This crystal can activate a signal, a special frequency. We called it the Jikji signal." Lee frowned. "Jikji? The old printed book from Korea?" "Yes," Min said, his eyes glowing with a final strength. "But it is not about the book itself. It is about what it means. It was the first of its kind. It meant we found a way to spread ideas faster, to preserve thought against time. The signal is a pattern based on that idea, the idea of preservation, of spreading knowledge against all odds. It is a call not to soldiers, but to a keeper." "A keeper?" Lee asked, confused. "Long ago, when humans first left Earth in great numbers, some feared we would lose ourselves. So they built one ship, not a warship, an archive ship, a flying library with an AI to protect it. Its mission was to wait until we were in danger of forgetting who we were. Then, it would return and remind us." Min coughed, his body weakening. "The signal is its recall command. It has been sleeping, maybe forever. But if the Kthar succeed, they will make the whole galaxy forget. They will erase us. Not just our bodies, but our idea. Lee looked at the crystal, its light reflecting in her eyes. It felt impossibly heavy. You want me to call it? A ghost ship? To fight the Cthar fleet? No, Min said, his voice fading to a whisper. I want you to call it to do its job. To preserve. The Cthar. They are a force of forgetting. The USS Jikji. It is a force of remembering. In a war like that, which side do you think will win? He lay back, his energy spent. They think history is a weakness. That is their blindness. Use it. Min closed his eyes. His breathing became slow and shallow. Lee sat in the quiet room, the weight of the crystal and her grandfather's words settling on her. Outside, the colony went about its evening. People laughed, children played, unaware that the shadow of a galaxy-wide empire was creeping closer. That night, Min passed away. Lee buried him under a tall tree behind the house, as he had asked. She did not cry much. She felt a cold purpose forming inside her. She went to the colony's small communications array, a dish used for weather satellites and local news. She bypassed the main systems with skills Min had taught her. She slid the data crystal into a port. A simple interface appeared. One button pulsed on the screen. Initiate Jikji protocol. She thought of the Cthar, burning libraries, silencing songs. She thought of her grandfather's stories. She thought of a galaxy slowly going dark, not of light, but of memory. Lee pressed the button. There was no explosion, no dramatic beam of light into the sky, just a quiet, powerful data pulse, a complex pattern of information and meaning, shooting out from the dish. It traveled at the speed of light, a whisper of an ancient promise slipping between the stars, a whisper carrying the shape of a thought, the structure of a memory, the pattern of a printed page on New Taejun. Nothing changed. Lee went home, the now empty crystal in her pocket. She looked at the old books on the shelf. They seemed different now, not fragile but patient, not weak but waiting. The signal was sent. The call was made. All that was left was to see if anyone, or anything, was still listening. The Jikji signal slipped through the silent ocean of space. It was not a loud shout, but a precise, repeating pattern. It was a sequence of numbers, images of old texts, audio of spoken languages, and the core principles of human logic and resilience. It was, in essence, a fingerprint of a civilization's mind. It passed through the Haleran system, where the Song people were now silent laborers in Cthar mineral pits. The signal washed over their occupied world, but their receivers were gone, their ears closed. Nothing happened. Further on, the signal reached the edges of a system currently under the shadow of the Cthar. The world of Tvan was a center of great art. Now, its floating galleries were smoldering ruins. In high orbit, the Cthar command ship, the Silencer, oversaw the final purges. On the bridge of the Silencer, Commander Tay monitored the operation. He was not like the Archon. His features were sharper, his eyes a tired gray. He was from a species conquered in the first waves of the Cthar expansion, the Veln. He had been young then. To save his family, he had conscripted. He was brilliant at strategy, which kept him alive, but every burned library, every shattered statue, felt like a piece of his own soul turning to ash. Commander, a sensor officer called out. We are detecting a low-power, wide-spectrum data transmission originating from an unregistered source. Vector points back to the agricultural colony, New Taejun. Content analysis? The officer worked for a moment, then looked puzzled. It is fragmented. It contains visual records of primitive printing presses, audio files of multiple extinct languages, mathematical proofs, philosophical texts. It is repeating a core identifier, Jikji. It appears to be historical data, non-technical, classification, cultural noise, threat level 0. Tay felt a strange pang in his chest. Cultural noise. That is what his people's epic poems had been labeled before they were deleted. A distress signal? He asked, his voice neutral. No, sir, the officer replied. It lacks any standard distress coding. It does not ask for help. It is just broadcasting information, like a museum beacon for no one. The Archon's face appeared on the main screen, his image severe.
Commander Tai.
Report on the Tvan purification. The main data core is being extracted and wiped. Archon, Tay said, his face a mask. The planet will be compliant within the cycle. Good, the Archon said. Our scouts detected that signal as well. Pathetic gesture. Some backward colony, pumping its forgotten stories into the void. It is the gasp of a dying mentality. When you are finished at Tvan, you will visit this new Taejun. Cleanse it. Erase this noise at its source. The screen went dark. Tay stood still for a long moment. He looked at the sensor readout of the signal. Jikji. It was stubborn. It was pointless. It was broadcasting art and ideas into a galaxy that burned them. He found he could not dismiss it as easily as the Archon. Meanwhile, the signal traveled on. For light years, it meant nothing. Then, it entered a dark, cold region of space, a nebula of dust and gas where stars were not yet born. Hidden within that cosmic cloud was an object. It was a ship, but unlike any other. It was angular and old, its design from a time of solid armor and vast power reactors. Ice and cosmic dust coated its hull. It had no running lights, no engine glow. It was the USS Jikji. For centuries, it had slept, maintaining only the most basic systems, waiting in the silence. The signal touched its outer sensors. Deep within the ship, in a vaulted chamber that served as its core, a bank of lights flickered. A holographic form shimmered into existence in the center of the room. It was the image of a man in a simple, old-style uniform. His face was calm. His eyes held a deep patience. This was the AI, the keeper of the ship. It had modeled itself after its final human captain. A man named June. The AI, June, processed the signal. It was not a standard SOS. It was the specific, encrypted pattern it had been built to await, the recall code, woven into the cultural signature of the Jikji. It meant one thing: humanity, or what remained of it, was in danger of forgetting. The core purpose of its existence was now active. June's hologram accessed the external feeds. He saw no incoming messages from a human fleet. He scanned long-range sensors, pulling data from silent probes scattered across the galaxy. The picture that formed was grim. He saw the expansion of the Kthar. He saw patterns of planetary bombardment that targeted cultural and information centers first. He saw species broken not just by force but by amnesia. His programming evaluated the threat. It was not a military problem alone. It was a systemic attack on memory itself. The primary function of the USS Jikji was preservation. The Kthar were the ultimate delete command. On the bridge of the Jikji, lights began to come on, one section at a time. With a deep, vibrating hum that shook the ice from its hull, the main power reactor woke from its long sleep. Engines, dormant for centuries, glowed with a soft blue light. Throughout the massive ship, systems booted. Libraries of data, stored in hardened crystal, became active. Fabrication units tested their functions. June's hologram now stood on the real bridge, looking at the star map. A course was plotted. The destination was not just New Taejun, the source of the signal. The destination was the path of the Kthar. His voice, calm and clear, spoke for the first time in hundreds of years. It echoed through the empty halls of the great ship. Threat to preserved knowledge identified. Primary directive engaged. All systems to operational status. We are returning. With a surge of power that scattered the nebula's dust for millions of miles around, the USS Jikji turned. Its engines flared, and it began to move. It was not a sprint, but a steady, relentless acceleration. It was a mountain of metal and memory, awake and moving with a single purpose: to ensure that the story did not end here. It flew towards the fading echo of its own recall, ready to write the next page. The USS Jikji moved through space with a quiet, unstoppable grace. It did not hide. Its size and its old, robust design made it impossible to miss on sensors. As it entered the fringe systems of the Orion Arm, it began to pass broken worlds. June, the AI, observed everything. His ship scanned the planet below. It had been a Veln world, Commander Tay's home. Now it was a silent mining operation. Great gouges marked its surface. The beautiful, spire cities of the Veln were dark and empty. The Jikji did not attack the Kthar mining ships in orbit. Instead, it broadcast a signal on all frequencies. It was not a warning. It was a gift. The signal contained the restored cultural database of the Veln people. Their music, their architecture, their family histories. Data the Kthar believed they had erased forever. It beamed this data directly to the planet's surface, to the personal devices of the Veln workers. On the surface, a Veln worker named Kale, no relation to the Kthar captain, was operating a plasma drill. A chime from his worn wrist unit made him jump. Such personal devices were banned, but he had kept his deactivated as a memory of his wife. The screen now glowed. On it, he saw his wife's face, from a festival recording he thought was lost. He heard the opening chords of his people's sunrise hymn. He stopped drilling. All around him, other workers were doing the same, staring at their own suddenly alive devices, hearing forgotten songs, seeing the faces of the dead-eye in orbit. The Kthar overseer ship detected the Jikji. They saw it was a human vessel, but its design was ancient. They laughed at its blocky shape. They moved to intercept, their weapons powering up. The Jikji still did not fire. As the Kthar ships closed, June activated a subsystem labeled Cultural Integrity Field. It was not a shield. It was a powerful, targeted data stream. It hacked into the Kthar ships' networks, not to disable engines, but to attack their mission logs and historical databases. On the lead Kthar fighter, the pilot screen flickered. His display of targeting data was replaced by a slow, scrolling text. It was the Declaration of the Rights of the Halaran Song People, a document he had personally burned a copy of months ago. Then it changed to the engineering schematics for a Veln water purifier, a technology made obsolete by Kthar conquest. Then it was a recipe for a Tvan spice bread. "Get this off my screen," the pilot yelled, frantically pressing buttons. But the data kept coming, flooding his systems with irrelevant, peaceful civilian information. It was a waterfall of everything his people sought to destroy. His targeting computer, overloaded with poetry and agricultural plans, shut down. His ship drifted, harmless and confused. The Jikji passed by. It moved towards the next system. News of the ghost ship reached Commander Tay on the silencer. He was preparing his fleet for the jump to New Taejun. The reports were confusing. A human battleship of old design. It did not fire weapons. It broadcast garbage data. It disabled ships by filling their computers with art and history. Tay felt a cold thrill. This was not normal. He reread the initial report on the signal from New Taejun. Cultural noise. The Archon had called it a gasp. But what if it was a call? And what if something had answered? The Archon's order was clear. Go to New Taejun and cleanse it. But Tay's curiosity, a trait he had tried to bury for years, was now awake. He gave a new order to his fleet. Change course. Intercept this ghost ship before it reaches the core systems. I want to see this weapon of culture for myself. Meanwhile, on New Taejun, Lee watched the sky. The colony was nervous. Rumors of the Ktharis approach were spreading. People were hiding valuables, preparing cellars. Lee did not hide. She maintained the Earth Vault. She kept Min's old books safe. She also monitored the comms, listening for any strange signal in return point. One night, a message crackled over an old, forgotten military frequency. It was not audio. It was a simple, repeating image. It was a scan of a page from a very old book. The page showed rows of elegant, hand-cast metal characters. Korean characters. At the top of the page were two symbols, Jikji. Lee's breath caught. It was a page from the Jikji itself. It was a reply. It was a confirmation. The ship was real, and it was communicating in the only language that made sense to it. The language of preservation. She showed the image to a few trusted friends, including a quiet network engineer named Day and a resourceful mechanic named Yuna. They didn't fully understand, but they trusted Lee. They saw the hope in her eyes. "We have to help it," Lee said. "It's coming, but the Kthar will be waiting. We need to give it information." We need to tell it where to go, where they are weakest. Using Day's skills, they began to tap into local sensor nets. They started compiling data on Cthar patrol routes, communication relay stations, and supply depots in nearby systems. It was not military intelligence in the normal sense. It was a map of where the forgetting was being managed. Lee believed the ghost ship, the Jikji, would know what to do with such a map. In the dark of space, the USS Jikji and Commander Tay's task force were on a collision course. One ship carried the weight of all that was nearly lost. The other carried a commander who was beginning to doubt everything he served. And between them, a young woman on a farming world prepared to send a librarian's battle plan, written not in tactics, but in the locations of memories waiting to be revived. The dark space between stars was no longer empty. Commander Tay's fleet, a collection of sleek Cthar hunters and a central cruiser, formed a deadly arc. Before them, blocking the path to the inner systems, hung the USS Jikji. It looked like a cliff face made of metal, old and solid. To the Cthar pilots, it seemed like a floating museum piece, a joke. All vessels, target its engines and weapons arrays. Tay ordered, his voice flat. He watched the strange ship on his screen. It made no move to evade. It launched no fighters. It simply waited. The Cthar ships fired. Bolts of crimson plasma streaked across the void. They struck the Jikji's hull and splashed apart in shimmering waves of blue light. The old ship's shields glowed, absorbing the impacts with a steady, unwavering hum. Not a single weapon on the Jikji returned fire. Shields are holding at 98%, a tactical officer reported, confused. Their power signature is immense. It's not fading. Focus fire on a single point.
Taibarkit the Kothar ships obeyed.
A concentrated barrage hammered against a section of the Jikji's forward hull. The blue shields rippled, but again, they held. Then the Jikji acted. It did not fire a cannon. A series of small, fast pods launched from its sides, streaking towards the Cthar vessels. Incoming projectiles. Point defense activated. Came the call. But the pods were not missiles. They were data needles. Just before Cthar lasers could destroy them, they burst open, releasing clouds of microscopic nanites and a powerful data burst. The nanites attached to the Cthar hulls not to cut, but to transmit. The data burst hit their communication and sensor systems. On the bridge of Tay's cruiser, the main viewer flickered. The image of the Jikji was replaced by a clear, high-resolution video. It showed the Haloran home world before the conquest. The great singing towers were whole, reaching for a golden sun. The sound of their collective morning song, a beautiful, haunting harmony, filled the Cthar bridge. For a moment, every officer froze, listening to the beauty of something they had been told was worthless noise. Tay's own screen changed. He saw the face of a Veln elder, his own grandfather, giving a speech about the ethics of community. Words he had not heard since he was a child. He felt a physical pain in his chest. On the fighter channels, panic erupted of a different kind. My controls are not responding. My display is showing recipes. I have a bread recipe on my targeting computer. I have architectural diagrams. How do I fly with this? The Jikji was not harming their ships. It was confusing them. It was reminding them. It was using their own networks to give back everything the Cthar had tried to steal. Then, a new, calm voice spoke over every Cthar channel. It was June, the AI. Cthar fleet, you are operating under a false premise. You believe memory is weakness. We are here to demonstrate it is infrastructure. Stand down. Destroy that signal. Jam it. Tay shouted, but his order was lost in the chaos. He watched as one of his fighters, its pilot utterly confused by the flood of alien poetry on his screen, drifted into another, causing a minor collision. It was not a battle. It was a system failure of ideology. Tay made a decision, a reckless one. He opened a direct, tight beam channel to the Jikji, bypassing the jammed networks. Ghost ship, this is Commander Tay of the Cthar Confluence. What is your goal? The reply was immediate and direct. Preservation. You are deleting the galactic record. We are the backup. Your method of conquest is illogical. You destroy the libraries of those you wish to rule. How can they build a future for you if you erase their past? Strength comes from a single history. Our history, Tay responded, repeating the doctrine he had been taught. But the words felt hollow hearing his grandfather's voice in his other ear. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, June's voice replied. You are making every link weak with forgetfulness. We have received a data packet from the source of our recall signal. It contains the locations of your cultural purge stations. We are not going to destroy them. We are going to visit them, and we are going to give back what was taken. The channel closed. On the tactical map, Tay saw the Jikji's engines glow brighter. It began to move not towards his fleet but around it on a clear course for a nearby system that housed a major Cthar data processing hub, a place where captured histories were wiped clean. Tay could order his fleet to pursue to physically block it, but he saw the state of his ships. They were disoriented, their crews shaken by the sudden, unwanted gift of memory. He saw the resolve of the Jikji. It had not even used its weapons. What would happen when it did? He thought of New Taejun. He had his orders to cleanse it. But the source of all this was there. A person who had called this ship. Someone who believed in old books enough to start a war with them. Change of plans, Tay said, his voice quiet but firm. Set a course for the agricultural colony, New Taejun. Maximum speed. We go in quietly. I want to find the source of the signal. I want to understand this weapon. He left unsaid what he truly felt. He needed to see the kind of people who fought with recipes and songs before the Archon or the Ghost ship decided the fate of the galaxy for good. The two forces parted. The Jikji, a mountain of memory, moved to attack the idea of forgetting itself. And Commander Tay, a man caught between two versions of history, raced towards the lonely farm world, hoping to find an answer in a dusty vault of books. The USS Jikji arrived at the Cthar data hub. It was not a military station. It was a factory for forgetting. A giant, black ring orbited a dead star. Ships from across conquered space docked here, delivering captured data cores, art, and historical records. Inside, vast machines pulverized physical artifacts and ran powerful deletion algorithms on digital ones. The final product was raw material for Cthar propaganda. The station's defenses were light. A few patrol ships. Its security was based on secrecy, not strength. No one attacked a library. Until now. The patrol ships moved to intercept. June did not bother with data needles this time. For the first time, the Jikji's actual weapons activated. Massive, old-fashioned kinetic cannons fired. Not to destroy, but with precision. One round struck the engine of each patrol ship, disabling them, sending them drifting harmlessly away. It was a clear, physical statement. The time for subtlety was over. The Jikji docked with the main hub. Its hull connected to the station's airlock with a thunderous clang. Then, it did something the Cthar had never anticipated. It began a reverse download. Instead of taking data, it gave it. At an incredible speed, the Jikji pumped the entirety of its restored cultural databases into the station's systems. It flooded the deletion machines with the very memories they were built to destroy. Haileran songs crashed into data scrubbers. Veln city plans overwhelmed erasure protocols. Human philosophies from Earth and the diaspora poured into the core processors. Alarms blared inside the station. Technicians scrambled. The systems are rejecting the purge commands, one yelled. The deletion queues are. They're filling with new data. It's all the old data. It's coming back. On the bridge of the Jikji, June monitored the process. He saw the Cthar trying to shut it down. He sent a focus burst through the connection, a powerful reconstruction algorithm. In the main archive hall of the station, a Cthar demolition team was about to vaporize a physical sculpture from Tvan. The beam from their tool flickered. Instead of dissolving the sculpture, the beam stabilized it, repairing a small crack on its surface. The Cthar stared, dumbfounded. Their tool of destruction had just performed an act of restoration. June's voice echoed through the station's intercom. You are technicians of emptiness. We are engineers of memory. Your function is now obsolete. He initiated the final command. The Jikji's broadcast array aimed at the nearest occupied world, a planet called Mir, where a broken population labored. It began transmitting the full, recovered history of the Mir people, stolen just weeks before on Mir people stopped work. They looked up at the sky or at old screens and saw themselves. They saw their past. A great, silent sob seemed to pass through the world. Then a murmur. Then a shout. The forgetting was over. Far away, on New Taejun, night had fallen. Lee was in the vault when she heard the low hum. It was not a colony sound. It was the sound of engines high in the atmosphere. She looked at her monitor. A sleek Kthar dropship, painted for stealth, was descending just outside the settlement. Her heart hammered. They had come for her. She sent a quick, pulsed warning to Day and Yuna. They're here. Then she did not run. She waited. The door to the vault hissed open. Not blasted, but carefully unlocked. Commander Tay stood there, alone, out of uniform in plain dark clothes. He held no weapon. He saw Lee, a young woman surrounded by paper books, and he saw the old data console behind her. You sent the signal, he said. It was not an accusation. Yes, Lee replied, her voice steady. Why? You had no army. You had this. He gestured at the books. You called a war with this. It's not a war, Lee said, echoing her grandfather. It's a reminder. You were taking away everyone's why. Why do you build? Why do you sing? Why do you care for your children? Without a past, there is no reason for a future. You were creating a galaxy of empty machines. Machines break. Memories, they adapt. Tay stepped inside, looking at the shelves. He ran a finger over a leather spine. Your ship, it does not fight like a ship. It fights by giving back what was stolen. It's not a warship, Lee said. It's a library that defends itself by lending out its books. Forever. Tay was silent for a long moment. He looked tired. The Archon is coming. He felt the hub go offline. He knows this is the source. He will not send a dropship. He will send a cleansing beam from orbit. He will turn this whole valley to glass to erase this idea. Lee felt a chill. When? Soon. Tay looked at her. Your ship, the Jikji. Can it stop him? I don't know, Lee said honestly. But it will try. It has to. This is the idea it was built to protect. Tay made his choice. He took a small data chip from his pocket. These are the schematics for the Archon's flagship, the Annihilator. Its shield frequency, its weapon cycles, its one weakness. It draws power for its main gun from its own historical archive. To fire, it must briefly access the database of all it has erased. A bitter smile touched his lips. The Archon's greatest strength is also a memory. Lee took the chip, her hand trembling. This was not just a military secret. It was a poem of perfect irony. Why give this to me? Because I am tired of building a future on ashes, Tay said. And I believe your library ship will know what to do with a story like that. At that moment, Day and Yuna appeared at the door, tools in hand, ready to fight. They saw Tay and froze. It's okay, Lee said. He's giving us a new chapter. She rushed to her console, inserting the chip. She began transmitting the data not just to the Jikji, but on the same Jikji frequency, the frequency of preservation. She sent the story of the Archon's fatal flaw out into the stars, a tale waiting for its reader. The Archon's fleet fell upon New Taejun like a black storm. His flagship, the Annihilator, was a blade of darkness against the stars. Below, the colony's people huddled in shelters, the air buzzing with the scream of approaching doom. Lee, Tay, Day, and Yuna stood at the edge of the settlement, looking up. There was no place to hide. The Archon's voice boomed from the sky, magnified 1,000 times. You have harbored the sickness of memory. You have touched the past. For this you will become dust, without history, without a trace. On the Annihilator's bridge, the Archon gave the order. Power the primary beam. Erase the valley. Deep within the flagship systems engaged. To fuel such a powerful weapon, the ship needed a massive surge of energy. It tapped into its most secure reserve, its own trophy vault, the condensed digital archive of every civilization it had conquered. For a brief moment, to fire, the Annihilator had to remember everything it had destroyed. At that exact moment, from the dark side of the colony's moon, the USS Jikji arrived. It did not charge. It simply moved into position between the planet and the Annihilator, a vast, silent shield. The Archon laughed. The ghost! Fire at it! Burn its memory from space! The Annihilator's main cannon glowed, a terrifying eye of red light. It gathered power, drawing from the stolen memories of 1,000 worlds. On the Jikji, June received Lee's transmitted data packet. He understood in a nanosecond. As the Annihilator's beam powered up, June did not raise shields. Instead, he fired a single specialized data probe. It was not a weapon. It was a key programmed with the one thing the Annihilator was not designed to handle: the complete, unedited, emotional truth of a single story. The probe slipped through the Annihilator's defenses as its systems were busy accessing the archive. It injected its payload directly into the core memory bank just as the beam was about to fire. The Archon watched his screen, waiting for the Jikji to vaporize. Instead, the main viewer flickered. The targeting data vanished. In its place, a simple video played. It was from the Veln home world, from the day of conquest. It showed a young Veln boy, hiding, watching as Cthar soldiers dragged his parents away. The boy's face was streaked with dirt and tears. It was Commander Tay as a child. The audio was his own voice, whispering a promise to his mother that he would be strong, that he would survive. It was a private, shattered moment of love and loss, now playing on the main screen of the greatest warship in the galaxy. On the bridge of the Annihilator, every crew member saw it. For a split second, the impersonal enemy had a name, a face, a childhood. The Archon roared. "What is this? Delete it!" But it was too late. The Jikji's probe had linked the memory directly to the power conduit. To fire the beam now, the ship would have to destroy that specific memory first. The system hesitated, conflicted by a command to erase the very data it was using for fuel. The red glow of the cannon flickered and died. The Annihilator was paralyzed by a stolen tear. June's voice then spoke across all channels, calm and clear. "Archon, you built your weapon on stolen stories. You forgot that stories have weight. They have heart. You cannot kill with a memory without first killing the memory itself. And that is a battle you will always lose." The Jikji then activated its own different kind of weapon. It opened a full broadband transmission to every planet, every ship, every listening post in the sector. It broadcast the raw, uncensored archives from the Annihilator's own vault. Not as data, but as experiences. The songs of Hilara filled communication bands. The family histories of the Veln scrolled on screens. The art of Tvan glowed on monitors. Across the Cthar fleet, the will to fight shattered. Soldiers looked at the faces of the people they had been told were nothing. They heard their music. They saw their dreams. The lie of the conquest crumbled under the weight of truth. The Archon stood alone on his bridge, his crew deserting their posts, staring at the images of the lives they had broken. His great weapon was silent. His empire was unraveling not from explosions, but from understanding. The Jikji moved closer. It extended no guns. It extended a docking tube, connecting to the Annihilator's main archive. "What are you doing?" The Archon whispered, defeated. "Our job," June's voice replied. "We are making a backup." Weeks later, the change was quiet. The Cthar war machine stopped. On New Taejun, Lee and her friends worked with Tay. The Jikji rested in a high orbit not as a conqueror, but as a school. Ships from many worlds came not to fight, but to learn, to download the histories that had been taken from them. The Jikji's fabrication units now made printing presses, data servers, and communication arrays, sending them out with copies of the Galactic Archive. Lee stood in a new field, the first field on Earth to be resettled. She held a seed in her hand. Next to her, Tay watched the simple green planet. The Jikji hung in the sky above them, a gentle sentinel. "It never fired a single shot to kill," Tay said, marveling. "It didn't need to. Lee said, planting the seed. It just reminded everyone who they were. And no one, once they remember, wants to be the villain in their own story. The galaxy was not saved by a battleship's return. It was saved by a library's renewal. The ravaging had required everyone to forget. The healing began the moment they remembered. And high above, the Keeper of the Word watched over the quiet, growing world, its mission finally complete. The story would continue,